In 2015, a team of scholars who were led by the health policy researcher Kelly Hallman published a study called The Shrinking World of Girls at Puberty. In the KwaZulu-Natal province of South Africa, Hallman and her colleagues monitored a cohort of children as they went through adolescence, and they tracked the children's changing attitudes to exploring local public spaces. At different ages, the children were asked to draw maps of the areas with which they were familiar. Hallman found that, aged 11, girls and boys sketched territories of similar sizes. But by the age of 14, girls' maps were only 1/3 the area of their male classmates' maps, and only 2/5 the size of the maps that they had drawn 3 years earlier. Hallman concluded that with puberty, girls' worlds shrink, while boys' worlds expand. This shrinking of girls' territories during puberty has directly detrimental effects on young women's lives. When girls are deterred from entering public spaces like parks, they find it harder to exercise, and girls' participation in sport experiences a dramatic drop-off during adolescence. 8-year-old girls and boys are found to do roughly similar amounts of moderate to vigorous physical activity, but by mid-teenagehood, boys are doing around 90 minutes more exercise per week than girls. A recent report by Women in Sport has found that 64% of girls will have quit sports by the age of finishing puberty, and 80% of girls feel they do not belong in sport. Teenage girls' perceptions that they don't belong in spaces for outdoor leisure also has knock-on effects on their social and educational development. The Western Australian researcher Candy James finds that adolescent girls frequently retreat to their bedrooms, which are, in the words of one interviewee, the only place in the world where she feels safe. But sitting alone in their bedrooms doesn't help girls to develop the sorts of social and leadership skills that are fostered in communal spaces like parks, and which prepare young adults for roles in the public sphere. And the patterns that are established in teenagehood, they set trends for life. Women in sport find that physically inactive children are much more likely to be inactive adults. So I'm really excited that this conference is examining why this shrinkage in freedom outdoors marks the experience of so many teenage girls and adult women, and that you're all exploring what can be done to ameliorate it. For the last 5 or so years, I've been working on a book called In Her Nature, which was published last month, in which I've explored some of the factors that deter women and girls from sport and from public space more generally. When I first started work on the book, I hoped that the major deterrents to women and girls' participation in outdoor activity would be so-called technical ones. I hoped that the major deterrents would be things like kit that's designed for male bodies and which is ill-fitting and uncomfortable and unflattering on women, or the ways in which the rules and regulations of outdoor events can be male-biased. I suppose I hoped that the problem would be easier to fix. But almost all the studies that I encountered concluded that the biggest deterrent to girls and women being able to move freely through public space is the presence of boys and men, and the threat that men pose to women's safety. Multiple investigations show that, as 15-year-old Australian girls put it, girls would use public spaces more if boys weren't around, and that girls purposely avoid active spaces that are dominated by boys. Observations of park users in North Carolina, Texas, and California find that the more likely a park is to be populated by adolescent boys, the less likely it is that teenage girls are present and active. 2 principal reasons emerge. The first is self-consciousness. In numerous studies, girls describe being acutely conscious of their physical appearance and their athletic competence, and they attribute this to past experiences of being embarrassed by boys through taunts aimed at their weight or appearance or sporting abilities. Girls also report being bullied for being too good at sports and therefore appearing like unfeminine tomboys. Many had memories of being ridiculed by PE teachers who unfavourably compared girls to male students. The second reason for girls' avoidance of public spaces containing boys and men is fear of violence and assault. Of girls aged 13 to 14 in Stockholm, 60% of those surveyed reported feeling scared in their own neighbourhoods. In Los Angeles, far more girls than boys say that they find parks unsafe. And in a study in Australia, girls rank parks as the least safe public space they could think of, followed by streets and then public transport. This is really disturbing. Parks are explicitly designed to encourage congregating and exercise, but something's clearly going wrong when girls and women consider them the least conducive place for those activities. In South Africa in 2015, not a single group of interviewed girls identified any public space as more than somewhat safe, and they ranked over 58% of spaces as unsafe or very unsafe. And incidentally, many of those same spaces were designated as extremely safe by boys. Some of girls' fears about public space are to do with the built environment. More girls than boys worry about poor maintenance of public spaces like parks and about being injured outdoors. But overwhelmingly, girls' fear centres on violence and sexual crime from boys and men. In a study in Los Angeles, it was found that the higher the density of crime within half a mile of their homes, the lower the physical activity rates of girls, but not boys. In interviews, girls express fear of undesirable users of parks, and they particularly worry about the threat of men perpetrating public sexual harassment and assault. It's important to emphasise that girls' anxieties are not fabricated. Most girls and women have direct personal experience of being intimidated by men in public spaces. And indeed, we're living through a period in which men's public harassment is intensifying. The children's charity Plan International UK has found that public sexual intimidation has increased during and since the pandemic and lockdown, and that men are targeting adolescent girls with sexual noises, obscene remarks, and assault with particular fervour. A recent survey of football fans has found that men's harassment of female spectators has more than doubled in the last 7 years. And men have murdered more women while out running in the last 7 years than in the previous 28 years together. Ensuring the safety of girls and women in parks, then, is a highly complex issue. The main factor that threatens women's safety outdoors is the vast social problem of male violence, and this is linked to social and cultural dynamics that mean that men are more likely to intimidate women outdoors at certain periods of time, and we seem to be living through one of those periods now. Much of hostile sexism today is forged in the crucible of online communities, such as the incels, men's rights activists, and men going their own way who populate the online manosphere. Here there's a widespread belief that men are the true victims whose power is being eroded, and that women are the devil, the thieves of male authority. And I think that men's intimidation of women in public spaces is clearly being perpetrated in that context. In a very recent study published last year, numerous male street harassers openly agreed with the statement that "I don't like feminism, and this behaviour is a way to punish women for trying to take power away from men." To promote female safety outdoors, then, we have to reckon with the material threats that face women and girls, which are sometimes complex, concealed, and rapidly evolving. But we also have to negotiate the ways in which the very concepts of threat and danger and risk can be misrepresented to deter women and girls from the outdoors. Often the risks that face girls and women in public space can be overstated or mismanaged, such as when police messaging advises women to stay at home when a rapist is on the loose. And studies of parenting behaviour in playgrounds shows that young girls are frequently socialised to be more fearful of risky play than boys. In tackling the question of risk and safety outdoors, it is also, in my mind, crucial to keep in mind something that Fiona Vera Gray articulates in her book, The Right Amount of Panic. She makes the point that there's a difference between, in her words, feeling safe from and feeling safe too. She elaborates that women learn that keeping ourselves safe from violence is more important than feeling safe to express and expand ourselves freely in the world. Establishing safety for women, then, is crucial, but it's not necessarily the end goal. In my view, it's instrumental. Safety is the condition under which the true end goal is attained, and that true end goal is women's freedom outdoors. Thank you. Thank you.